All right. Thank you. And very, very warm welcome to our webinar today. We are hosting Chelsea Denault and Alicia Wise. And Chelsea, why don't we start with you, our guest of honor, and let you introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Thanks so much. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Chelsea Denault. I'm the coordinator of the Michigan Digital Preservation Network, which I'll talk more about what the MDPN is and what we do later on in our questions. Just a little bit about my background. I come from over a decade in the public history field, in various museums and community archives, and archdiocesan archives, in Chicago and here in Michigan. So that's what I bring to the table.
Which is a lot.
Yeah.
And Alicia, I know a lot of people know you, but please, again, introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Alicia. I'm the executive director of the Clocks Digital Archive. I've already learned something new. I did not know that Chelsea had a background in public history. My background's in archaeology, so I think we're going to vibe on the past as well as the present and the future. Looking forward to the conversation very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you all. And my name is Gali. I work with Alicia at Clocks. Very happy to have this opportunity to speak with these very esteemed ladies. Okay, so Chelsea, shall I start with you? Can you
Sure.
introduce the MDPN and explain its mission in digital preservation to our
Yeah,
audience?
absolutely. So the MDPN is a collaborative membership-based organization that provides a digital preservation service and a community of practice to cultural memory organizations across the state of Michigan. So that includes public libraries, universities and colleges, museums, corporate archives, community archives, municipalities, historical societies, right? Any organization that's collecting historical content and data. So we operate a distributed preservation network with servers, all preserving the same content at 5 host organizations in different areas across the state. Using the LOX software. And our mission is to provide affordable and easy to use preservation services as a means to create a more equitable preservation landscape here in Michigan. Um, and
Um,
yeah,
yeah, no, that was a great
yeah,
introduction. So
yeah,
you were talking about, Chelsea, you were talking about supporting
yeah,
libraries and archives and such in
yeah.
preserving digital collections. Can you give us a little bit more details about how you went and did that?
Yeah. So from the very beginning, the MDPN was created to help build capacity for preservation, especially for small and under-resourced local history organizations by centralizing investment in a single shared system and reducing redundant preservation efforts across the state. So rather than each university or public library or museum running their own homegrown or vendor-run preservation system and potentially leaving small organizations behind, the MDPN consolidates expertise and investment into one shared statewide system for the benefit of all. So we also try to make membership accessible to organizations of all sizes by offering a tiered membership model based on an organization's annual budget. So, for example, our 2 largest universities here in Michigan are paying more annually to support the service for, like, for
Wow.
instance, the completely volunteer Presque Isle Lighthouse Historical Society, right, which has like 12 members. Um, and so, besides access, we support small organizations by providing one-on-one training and documentation. We offer free readiness consulting services to members that help them make the jump from, thinking to themselves, I should be doing digital preservation,
Yeah, yeah,
feeling
yeah.
confident about doing digital preservation. So that includes
Yeah.
like a digital preservation policy, going through benchmarking and assessment tools, talking to them about advocacy, I think
Yeah.
most importantly, we offer a non-judgmental community of practice for members to share challenges and strategies and successes with each other. And members tell me all the time that that's actually one of the most helpful things that we provide to them is just the sort of like demystification of digital
I
preservation as
love that.
a not
I
scary
love that.
thing.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. Alicia, this must speak to your heart. Your
It
heart
does,
must
but
be
can
so
I ask
happy right
questions?
now.
So, Chelsea, does
Yeah.
every state in the United States have such a wonderful preservation network? And if not, what's different or special about Michigan? How did you
Oh,
start?
Gosh, that is such a great question, Alicia. No, not every state has a preservation network. Um, Other states that have preservation networks include the Alabama Digital Preservation Network, which was founded in 2006. And we like to call them like the granddaddies of statewide, digital preservation. And we actually took a lot of pointers and technical innovation from them to Michigan when we were created back in 2020. So we're just wee babies still in the digital preservation landscape. Um, I think what makes maybe Michigan so unique to me, and this is something that we were talking about, before the webinar started. I find that I'm from Michigan, but I spent a decade, like I said, in Chicago. And I find that Michiganders are so willing to collaborate and so open with each other and so willing to share their experiences and so willing to share, things that they've tried that haven't worked. And we're also so ready to like celebrate each other's successes. There's just a real tightness in this cultural memory community where people are really invested in each other's successes. And
right.
a long history of collaboration in the library field across institutions. So
It
Brilliant.
sounds like collaboration and the openness and non-judgmental
yeah,
is like the heart of all of this, right, Chelsea? Do you
it
feel that way?
it truly is. We
Mhm.
just had a symposium celebrating the end of our IMLS grant, which we'll talk more about the grant later on. And it that's the one thing that people said in response, right? They said, we learned a lot, you ordered great food, but really it was that sort of community sharing and just being in community with each other and celebrating our successes. That's what they actually said was the most impactful part of the
Yeah,
symposium. Yeah.
right, right.
You were going to
And
say something, Alicia.
It was just that I think this is such a cool model outside of the United States as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because the number of organizations and the geographic area that you're covering are similar to a country in Europe or
Right.
on another continent or a
Yeah.
province in Canada. It's so transferable. It's so actionable in other settings.
And I'm so glad that you brought that up. And again, like I said, I'm sure we'll get to our IMLS grant and its deliverable. But when we were proposing our grant, the thing that we wanted this to be was a sustainable and replicable model that you could take to any state in the nation, in here in the United States, but that you could also take to maybe a region of states or a region of Canada or a region of any continent. And so, yeah, I'm really glad that you picked up on that.
can we talk about this grant a little bit, Chelsea? Can you tell us
Yeah,
about it? What was the grant about? How did you apply? How did you win? And of course, what was the outcome we hear about? But
yeah,
I'm really curious. I'm sure our audience is as well to hear about the grant itself.
yeah, absolutely. So we back in 2022, we applied for a grant from the Institute for Museum and Library Services, one of their national leadership grants. And these are 2-year grants that allow you to do a project that IMLS hopes will be, again, like I said, replicable and shareable to other users across the United States. And so we applied for this grant. Um, with sort of two goals in mind. The first was to get a sort of leg up for the MDPN to build out our technical infrastructure a little bit faster, and to help our colleagues at the LOX program with the development of their new LOX 2.0 software. And so we were able to take some of our grant funds and give them a little stipend to help with development of the software, because we're what we call native LOX 2.0 users. So we've only ever used the new version of the LOX software, which was really important to our grant. The other goal, though, was to create this model of a replicable community-led collaborative digital preservation network. So making sure that those community and collaboration values were at the center of the deliverable that we were putting out. And so the biggest outcome from this grant was our implementation toolkit, which I can drop a link in the chat. It shares several resources that we developed during the grant period across 5 different areas. So building a community, building a technical infrastructure, building workflows, building governance, and building users. And so all of those resources that we created during the grant period are in that toolkit. They're free to download, use, adapt to anyone in the world, with the goal that this helps future users leapfrog some of the challenges that we faced in our development, right? It's always easier to start with something to iterate on and adapt it rather than starting from scratch. And we really wanted to provide that to others who were interested in potentially building their own collaborative digital preservation network.
Amazing. And if you drop that link in the chat, I'm sure a lot of our participants would be really interested in looking at the toolkit, Chelsea.
Yes,
I
I have
had
it
a
right
chance
here.
to flip through it yesterday, and every time I
Okay.
read it, I'm just more impressed. Thank you for that. That's really wonderful. No, it's great because, too often digital preservation conversations are about technology, which is super
Yeah,
important, but it's
yeah,
not the only thing. It's like the human and organizational
yeah,
structures around the technology is what really makes it possible.
yeah. I agree. That's one thing that we always like to say to throughout this entire grant process and now beyond, right? That and I feel like I don't need to say this to anyone on the call, right? We all know this, but digital preservation is more than a technical problem. It's a people problem. And I think we really tried to convey that in our toolkit, by when you look at the 5 different sections, only 2 of them are about technical things, right? The other 3 are about how do we sort of live in community in this preservation network? How do we govern that community with each other in a member-led collaborative way? Right. And then how do we build users? Right. You can set up a beautiful, a perfect, a technical preservation network, but if no one's using it, is it successful? And so we really wanted to focus in on the people who were using the network in that last section, building users.
Brilliant. Now, half of my brain wants to go down. What are
I know.
those shared values that unite you? And a part of
Yeah.
my brain wants to talk a little bit about LOX 2.0 because we're in transition to that version of the software as well. But should we start with the values?
I always want to start with values.
Excellent.
It both is appropriate because I always want to, and the MDPN literally started with our values first, right? Right, I think collaboration and shared values are so important to any digital preservation initiative. And right on the shared values piece, I really think that working and being in community is hard. And there's a lot of negotiation and conflicting priorities and differing expectations. But I think one way to sort of smooth out those potential challenges up front is having open and frank discussions with stakeholders about what our shared values are, what our shared vision is, and doing this in a transparent way as a community creates this sense of accountability for everyone at the table. And so this is something that we did very early on it's, I think, the first resource actually in our toolkit. We brought together stakeholders from public libraries, from universities, from historical societies, from museums here in Michigan. And we sat everyone down at the virtual table because remember, this is 2020, and no one is allowed to sit at an actual table together. And we essentially asked this group of people who had all expressed interest in starting a statewide digital preservation network, what does a successful network look like in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years? What does success look like? And I think by defining together what success looked like and what our values were, we were able to all sort of buy into that and create a sense of accountability towards that. So one of the values that I really like to pull out here is equity. And to me, that was probably the value that came up the most. And I think in our community discussions, right, that came out to say that success to the MDPN looks like small, underfunded organizations actively using the MDPN. And so what did that mean for our members? Well, that means that your, right, well-funded university needs to help support that vision. And so, right, you need to be paying more into the pot than the smaller organizations to support their use. And if we can all agree that that's what success looks like, right, you won't complain about the difference in price. And so I think we're really lucky here in Michigan to sort of have that long history of collaboration like this, and to have institutions that are really committed to equity and accessibility for the broader good of all.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. Values resonate as well. And I put a link into the chat for some shared values for digital preservation services that are community-based and collaborative. It's really helpful to have these shared values frameworks that work across our services as well, because it can inform collaboration and partnership and the rest of it. And I know you're a big champion of this as well, aren't you?
Oh, we work together on the DPSC, and I feel like every single meeting, I always want to bring us back to these values because, again, I feel like this is one of the things that sort of separates, right, collaborative digital preservation efforts from other sorts of efforts in the field, that we can draw on our values to move our different projects forward. And I think that's really unique and really special.
Agreed,
Yeah,
absolutely. So a nice set of tangible outputs from that
yeah,
collaboration partnership, those shared values as well.
yeah,
Um, can we go back to the technology for a little bit then? So
of
the
course.
Linux 2.0 software, which is very dynamic and can be integrated with multiple systems, shared across preservation services. And you use tools like Dart as well, don't you? Can you say something about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So to us, one of the primary goals of our IMLS grant was to create, we were calling it drag and drop digital preservation, right? If you can drag and drop a file from one place to another, you can do digital preservation. And we wanted to make it that simple because a lot of these small and underfunded organizations that we were asked to support, they don't have a lot of technical skills, right? They don't have deep archival knowledge. And so sometimes they don't even have an email address, right? Like, so we really wanted to make sure that we were lowering as many barriers as possible to their actual preservation workflow. And so we knew we wanted to use the LOX 2.0 software for the preservation side, for the right sort of storage or preservation side of things. Um, but we wanted to find, we actually did a LOX 2.0 pilot during the time before I joined the MDPN. Oh, welcome back, Gali. Um, Before I joined the MDPN. And what that pilot found was that it was sometimes difficult for non-technical users to package content and get it into a LOX server or onto a staging server. And so we knew that that was the place that we needed to maybe adapt some workflows to make things easier. And so we looked at several packaging tools and ultimately settled on DART, the Digital Archivist Resource Tool that's created and maintained by AP Trust. They've just released DART 3, which is incredible. It has much better network connectivity, much better capacity. And so we're just in the initial testing phase with our members, but so far we're really delighted. And Dart is a great tool in that it allows you just to drag and drop content from your computer into Dart. It'll package that content according to the Bagot specification. And then you can point that content to any storage location that you want. And so for MDPN, we have our content go to a staging server that we manage. And from there, all five, six of our servers can harvest and crawl that content. But it was really that drag and drop mentality that we wanted to demonstrate was possible as part of this grant. Because that, again, just lowering those barriers is so important.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that Gali came back in time for that part of this conversation because she and I were on a call earlier today with the wonderful Dom Mitchell from the Director of Open Access Journals. And
Right.
we were talking about how to make it easier for the very long tail of Diamond OA journal publishers around the world to be able to package and deposit content for
Yeah.
preservation.
Hmm.
And, these might be academics, they're very time pressed.
Yeah.
They're not preservationists or archivists. So really simple tools for transmitting the information. Absolutely
Yeah.
essential.
Yeah. And
And the
I
best part is it's
apologize for
free. Oh,
disappearing.
oh, you're
No,
totally
it's
So
fine.
okay.
The best part too, right, about tools like Dart are they're free and open source. So they're
exactly.
easy to adopt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
getting serious for a minute, easy preservation services that are value-based, they kind of seem important in 2026 around the world, in the United States, but also further afield. Could you say something, Chelsea, about how your experience and work is important in terms of the state of the world and the geopolitical pressures and crises we're seeing happening every which way?
Yeah, this is something that I think about a lot. And to me, I sort of think about it in two buckets. One is human caused climate change. So my background is actually as an environmental urban historian. And so I think a lot about right, human caused climate change and the impacts that it has on us, especially here in Michigan, right, where we're surrounded by four of the five Great Lakes. And so in the past 6 years, we've experienced, right, bigger, wetter storms that are causing catastrophic flooding all across the state. And it's been posing real risks for local history content in the digital infrastructure that we use for their access and preservation. And so I think that's the first bucket to me is the risk of human caused climate change. But I think you're right. The other risk is right geopolitical change and I like how you say it and chaos. Um, right for folks who were maybe doing the math when I was talking about our IMLS grant, I said that that was a grant that we applied for in 2022. It was a 2-year grant. And you might say to yourself, Chelsea, it's 2026. That's 4 years. Yes, that's because, in part, the chaos that we've been dealing with here in the United States, the political chaos we've been dealing with here in the United States, actually pushed that timeline out because our IMLS grant, like all grants, were canceled in early 2025. And we actually had to reapply or appeal that decision with our lawyer to get that grant reinstated, which it was back in May. And so we were able to finish out the work of that grant and release this toolkit. But to me, the beauty of a distributed digital preservation network is that it can help combat, at least protect digital content from both of those risks, right? And I think this is why digital preservation to me feels so important right now, right? A distributed digital preservation network has servers in places that have different risk types or risk areas. So if one part of the state is flooding, right, maybe it's not flooding in the other four, parts of the state. This is also why we have a server at the LOX program in California, so that, right, at least we have one sort of lifeboat outside of the state of Michigan. Um, but this is actually a conversation that our members have been having as there are a lot of partners in the LOX community that we work with internationally. And does it behoove us to talk with them about having a lifeboat in another country? Right. And so those are very serious conversations that our advisory committee is having right now. And ultimately, I think that's the strength of a distributed network, right? Is that you can have these lifeboats for your data that are sort of insurance policies and can help protect the historical record from both, right, natural disasters and political disasters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There is some really fascinating work that the Royal Library in the Netherlands is leading right now to create a picture of what a global resilient information network would be like and what its characteristics would be.
Yeah.
And this geographical distribution and protection of content that's important, it
Yeah.
is central to that because, of course, the history and the local collections in Michigan are meaningful for people around the world now and for future generations as well. And
Yeah.
Gali, this would be a really cool question for you as collections director here at Clocks. You've been so articulate about articulating the value of local, regional, national, and international collections and different perspectives on
Exactly.
historic events. Do you want to say something about
Yeah.
that?
Well, thank you. Yes, and I think Chelsea, you've seen we've been working really, really hard, alongside what you said, is to really reach out to regions,
Yeah,
countries, different publishers, different libraries, and engage them in this preservation conversation.
yeah,
For us, I think, and Alicia and I have been working on that, is the preservation of languages, cultures, research, and others, right, that are so vulnerable these days, whether, like you said, environmental hazards, but also war zones and such. And so, yeah, when you were talking, I was really connecting with what you said. For us, it's an immense importance to reach out to every region that we can and say, we need to preserve this human assets, right? So yes, indeed, indeed. And yeah, I just want to say also Snowden, our colleague from Lux, is on this call. Welcome, Snowden. Um, and Chelsea, I think this is something for you. She asked if you can talk about how individual members support the community of practice you're creating in Michigan.
Offers individual membership. Um, no, that's a great question, Snowden. So we do offer individual memberships in addition to institutional memberships. The individual membership doesn't at this time, although we're thinking about how do we support people who want to do family history preservation, which we have a really strong genealogy community here in Michigan. So, but right now, individuals can't access the preservation network, but they can participate in the community of practice. And to us, that looks like them participating on one of our several committees, participating in workshops or symposia that we put on. We also have weekly office hours for that are free and open for digital preservation questions. It's just me sitting in a room, in a Zoom room, waiting for people to bring me their questions. Um, And then we also offer, in collaboration with the state library here in Michigan, monthly digital collections office hours where we bring the experts in digitization, access, and digital preservation, which is myself, to answer questions from folks across the state about any digital collections questions that they might have. And so those individual members of the MDPN, they can participate in that community of practice. They can learn about digital preservation. They can start maybe planning for their organizations, jump to become organizational members. But it's also, to me, like I said, the nice part about joining the community of practice is just demystifying digital preservation and
Yes.
seeing that everyone, one of the metaphors that we use a lot is that digital preservation is sort of a road trip, that it's a journey, and you might find yourself at a different place on the road trip than someone else, and that's okay, right? They just started their journey a couple days before you did.
Right.
But it's also nice when you're on your road trip and you find someone who's driving down the road next to you and is sort of encountering the same challenges and problems with you. And so to us, that's the beauty of the community of practice is understanding that the person who's further down the road isn't better. They just started earlier or they have
Earlier.
more resources. And to us, that's the beauty of the individual membership is you get on the road sooner, and sort of see that this isn't scary. It's just a journey. Um,
Right.
so
That's such a such a lovely way to describe it. I love that. We were
yeah,
talking to Dominic earlier, and he described to us some of the difficulties that
yeah,
publishers have, in understanding the process and all that, and how threatening, And
yeah,
I love your metaphor. It's, there's nothing to be scared of. It's just a journey, and you
yeah.
always find people along the way that can support what you're doing.
And
That
to me, it's such a rich metaphor because road trips are always better with friends. And so,
true.
right, like you always want to talk about like who are your road trip buddies? Like who are you bringing on this journey with you? And
Right.
then our members always like to joke that, sometimes you get distracted on the road. You might see like a sort of thing that you want to pull off and see like the world's largest piece of corn, or right, these sort of like weird sideshow things that you see sometimes
Right.
here in the
Right.
US, where you might need to stop and like grab some lunch, and there's nothing wrong with sort of pausing your digital preservation journey because you can always get back in the car, right?
Right.
And that's something that we
True.
talk about a lot with our members at smaller organizations who are maybe wearing, five different hats. They're the local history archivist, they're the digitization specialist, they're the digital preservation librarian, right? They're doing all of these things, and a lot of them feel guilty when they're not doing digital preservation. And it's a really useful metaphor for us to be able to say, don't feel guilty. You just stopped and got lunch, right? You just got distracted by
I
the
love
world's
it. I
largest
love
cherry
it.
pie, right? Like,
I love it. Yeah.
don't feel
Yeah.
bad. Just get back in the
Exactly.
car when you have time. So,
Right. I love that, Chelsea. I'm so happy we're recording this. This is wonderful. So what do you think the next steps are for MDPN? What are the opportunities? What do you see for the
mm,
future?
yeah, I think first off, we're right continuing to build our membership here in Michigan, to make sure that our financial state is more stable. Right now, we receive funding from the state library and from my host organization, the Midwest Collaborative for Library Services, and from our membership fees. And so the more that we can build our membership here, the more financially stable we can be, and the more rare and unique local history collections we can preserve.
Mm,
And so I think in addition to building membership, we're really excited about all of the possibilities that our toolkit have opened up to us. We've already had several other states reach out to us, to say, thank you so much for this toolkit, but can you meet with our staff to talk about how you implemented these things. That's something that I'm really excited for because I think if we can sort of show people the path, we it'll be easier for them to create their own network faster. And so we might have, right? Right now we only have two, soon to be three, state digital preservation networks here in the United States. And I hope that in part because of our toolkit and the consulting that we're able to provide, I hope that we have 50, right? So we'll see.
I, we hope so too.
Yeah.
We hope so too. That's wonderful. So we're right at the end of this wonderful talk, Chelsea. You've been so lively and so articulate. I love how you describe things. Yeah, it's a road trip. And you can stop
Right?
along the way, meet
Yeah.
friends that are there along with you, and get back to it.
And see giant ears of corn
Yes,
on the
that is
side of the
true.
road.
Yeah, yeah, I would love to see that.
No joke. People are probably like, that's a really weird thing. But if you go to Traverse City, Michigan, which is the cherry capital of the world, they like to say you will find the world's largest cherry pie.
Okay, that's my next road trip, I guess. Well, anyway, I'm opening the floor now. I'm going to stop the recording, but I'm going to invite anyone who would like to ask questions or have comments to share that with us.